and so to the impact that revelation can make in our growth as Christian disciples, and to a story that has come to mean a whole lot to me. On the morning of Sunday, the 10th of November 1918, Alec Watson, a pharmacist and son of a local merchant seaman, took a walk on Tynemouth's Long Sands beach that was to change his life. Haunted by the fact that an injured leg had rendered him unfit to fight for his country, challenged by the question of what he should do now that the war was virtually over, Alec later wrote in his diary that my call for missionary service on a memorable morning in 1918 was that I should take up medicine and then offer my services to the Church Missionary Society. The society was to me then only a name, and joining it, to me, a divine order. It was a crisis moment in the life of a very special man who went up to head up mission hospitals in China and the East End of London, and to become a husband, father and grandfather, eventually numbering me among his many grandchildren. And the extraordinary growth spurt that accompanied it began with a moment of revelation, that so-called divine order on a Tyneside beach, as well as being the culmination of years of faithful prayer and Christian service. The Gospels, and especially the book of Acts, are full of crisis moments of this kind, crises that have revelation at their core. Many of those are related to teaching and preaching, and we'll be looking at those next week. But there is also an emphasis on visions and dreams and prophecies, especially where individuals and whole church communities are seeking to discern God's will and direction for the future, as many of us are seeking to do right now. Luke's Gospel, for example, begins with two glorious chapters of visions and dreams and songs granted to old and young men and women, lay and ordained alike, without which our Christmas carol services will be very much diminished. Luke's second volume, the book of Acts, moves rapidly to the day of Pentecost with its wind and fire and that extraordinary sermon by the Apostle Peter. From now on, the Apostle teaches, the work of the Spirit will be thoroughly democratized, made available to all flesh, in fulfillment of the prophecy of Joel. Men and women will prophesy, the young men will see visions and the old dream dreams, and God might equally reveal his purposes through the church's caretaker or the caretaker's little granddaughter as through its pastor or bishop. And so the storyline of the book of Acts continues, and time and again, often at the most critical of moments, dreams, visions and prophetic conversations play a key role in the unfolding of the story. Stephen's calling as the first Christian martyr is accompanied by a vision of Jesus standing at the right hand of God. Philip the evangelist has what we might call a holy hunch that leads him to the desert and a powerful encounter with an Ethiopian civil servant. Paul's road to Damascus experience comprises a series of visions, both to him and to a brave little saint called Ananias, each confirming the authenticity of the other. The same is true as Peter is propelled into his first fishing expedition in a Gentile lake, with a series of extraordinary events convincing both him and the Roman centurion Cornelius that when Joel said that the Spirit will be poured out on all flesh, he really meant it. And so it goes on. Those early Christians weren't naive to the dangers of visions and dreams, of false prophets or deluded people claiming that the Lord had told them to do this or that, and so pushing their weight around and preying on the gullibility of their listeners. According to an ancient Christian manual called the Didache, true prophets would be sound in their teaching as well as exhibiting the manners and conduct of the Lord. Just two of the tests that the author suggests will help us to sort out the wheat from the chaff. But how important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, to mix my metaphors, not to despise prophecies, as Paul puts it, given our pressing need to seek direction from God and not just to come up with a string of bright ideas. Speaking personally, I don't see myself primarily as a visionary, dreamer or prophet, certainly not with capital letters attached. But time and again I have been surprised and humbled by the gentle prompting of the Spirit as I prayed for wisdom and direction myself, and by the remarkable stories that I've heard of the experience of others. Since my ordination, I've been privileged to lead churches whose members have set up nursery schools, prison fellowship groups, parenting courses, community cafes, football leagues, curry nights, pregnancy advice centres, debt advice centres, homelessness projects, exercise classes for the elderly, and a whole lot of other remarkable activities. Since becoming a bishop, I've stood in awe of many churches in the diocese that have done the same and more, not least in the extraordinary faith, courage and creativity demonstrated through the COVID crisis. And whilst not all enterprises have been initiated by those who would call themselves visionaries, dreamers and prophets with capital letters attached, there's no question that genuine, God-given vision has been at the heart of them. And so in the next part of this first session, I'd like us to turn to a brief Bible reading from the book of Acts. It's Acts chapter 13 and verses 1 to 3, which tells the story of how Barnabas and Paul were sent out on their first missionary journey. And on the sheet that accompanies this video, I've suggested a few questions that you might like to ponder as you read it, either on your own or as part of a group. May the Lord bless you as you turn to the scriptures now, and bless you on your discipleship journey during this season of Lent.